Hello, and welcome to Shades of Pleasure, a podcast celebrating pleasure, sexuality, and the vibrant, inclusive spectrum of love, gender, and relationships. I'm your host, Mo, and with me are my co-hosts, Melissa, Wayne, and Kelly. And together we hope to dismantle tropes that no longer suit us and change the narrative towards more authentic living. Hello, and welcome to Shades of Pleasure, a podcast dedicated to sexuality, relationships, and the pursuit of ethical and consensual non-monogamy. I am one of the hosts. My name is Mo, and I also have here with me Kelly.
Okay, and Melissa.
And Wayne.
We're just going to jump right in today and start talking about our favorite topic, which is
non-monogamy.
And monogamy too.
Yeah, non-monogamy and monogamy too, and specifically ethical and consensual non-monogamy. But I will have to say that I don't know about you, but for me, it definitely didn't start out very ethically or consensually. So today we're going to take a little bit of time to introduce ourselves and talk a little bit about how we all got into non-monogamy and the various paths that led us here to finding ethical and consensual non-monogamy. So who wants to start?
I'll start us off. Let's see. Usually when I introduce myself, I talk about like what I'm doing and that I'm a therapist and blah, blah, blah. Today, I think I want to just start off introducing myself by just sharing a little bit more personally of who I am and not my professional status and what I do. So I'm from Los Angeles and I was born I'm just gonna just tell you my whole childhood now. I was born in Los Angeles and I grew up predominantly in East Los Angeles and kind of all over the San Gabriel Valley area. And I've always enjoyed talking about sex and sexuality, and I've always, I think, been just free-spirited. Um, and I've always been into boys. Like that was my passion before before anything else as that I say is my passion today as an adult. Um, and I really do emphasize boys, like boys plural, not just one at a time, like all of them all the time.
All at once.
All at once. Not just boys. It hasn't just been boys, but like that's really where it kind of is at for me. So, but let's see. I'm tend to be kind of quiet, introverted, and I love to dance and I love to move and yeah, I love to be outside. I love nature. So, all that said, one thing that I can share about myself is that I know that I have a really big heart. I know that I have a lot of love to give. I love to connect with people. I don't always like to be social and do social things, but I really do enjoy like seriously, sincerely and genuinely enjoy my connections with people and really value them and really grateful for them. And I really tend to, I'm so grateful to be able to say I really do make some really great connections and I know a lot of wonderful people and I'm so grateful for all the connections that I've made in my life. So all I had to say again that let's see, what else do I want to share? I think I didn't know anything about consensual non-monogamy or that term non-monogamy until I met Wayne, who is the other co-host here, and we met when I was 18. And before that, though, I just was just like, again, free spirited, just exploring, experiencing life and just doing my thing. And I just thought, like, yeah, this is just, yeah, this is what it is. And then Wayne was like, there's this word and there's a community and there's a place. And I was like, what? Sign me up. Let's go. Let's do it. Yes, I want to see it all. So that's kind of a little summary, and I'm so excited and happy to share all of the nitty-gritty details of my experiences. But
You're
side note,
excited.
I guess I should say we're because this is kind of how we all met and how we got together to do this podcast. I am a licensed sex positive sex therapist, sex and sexuality and relationship therapist, and also non-monogamy advocate, love and non-monogamy advocate, mentor, and community builder.
Yes. All right,
Yeah.
so I'll go
Oh,
next. Yes.
thanks, Melissa.
Yeah. So, hi, I'm Wayne. First of all, I'd just like to say that, I understand why we say ethical non-monogamy, but I always feel like when we say that, it's as if non-monogamy is not ethical. I feel like we say that for the masses, so that it can be accepted but no one ever says ethical monogamy, so I always think about those things, but yes, for myself, hi, I'm Wayne. I'm originally from Washington, born and raised in Washington, D.C. Uh, back when it was called Chocolate City. It was a lot different than
I
it is.
remember Chocolate
Yeah.
City.
Yes, it's a lot different now. Yeah, yeah, it's so gentrified and different now. I don't even recognize home when I go home anymore. But I
Hmm.
had the privilege to move around a lot. Lived outside the country a lot of my for large parts of my life before I moved to California. So it gave me a broader perspective of just life in general. I got to see the way people related differently in different countries and just in different states of different areas. And so it was so eye-opening to me. It just gave me a broader understanding of myself because I learned about sex at a very early age. I wasn't sexually active in having sexual intercourse until I was almost 19. I was a late bloomer, but I learned about sex at a very early age. So a lot of conflict was there and kind of like trying to figure out myself and things of that nature. But yeah, I feel like for me, I always felt like I thought differently than the majority of people around me. I was more open to things. I was more understanding and more forgiving. I never really judged people around, whatever their sexuality was or whatever their promiscuity was. It didn't matter to me. I'm still cool and we could still be friends. And never any judgment. I never shamed or name called anybody, and I think that kind of my friends who were my friends, they didn't understand it. They were like, "How could you not think like that? Or how could you not be like that?" I just don't. I never gave into peer pressure so much so that I've never even drank or tasted, alcohol or tried any drugs. So peer pressure is not a thing for me. But yeah, so I just kind of like realized that I love speaking about relationships from at a young age. Probably started about, man, probably early 20s when I really started talking about it and starting to just trying to figure out who I am and what I was into or what type of relationships styles that I liked or wanted to. And through my exploration, by the time I met Melissa, I was able to articulate where I was at in my journey. I was like, hey, I don't know if I believe I believe monogamy is natural, but I just know for myself that I don't think I could be in a monogamous relationship. And so that's kind of how we started our journey and we kind of went from there. Yeah. And by the way, also I'm a certified sex intimacy and relationship coach myself. I'm out here in LA. Yes. And yes, that is who I am.
Yay. Thanks, Wayne. Thanks, Wayne and Melissa. I love you guys' stories.
I do too. I'll go next. I'm Kelly, and I'm from a very small town in the South, very conservative, very Christian, very right wing, very not sex positive. And so I think I had a lot of qualms about things, and just the only thing I really heard about sex as a kid was it's bad and you don't do it until you get married. So there was a lot to kind of figure out there. But then, I much like Melissa was saying, I really value relationships. I think I value relationship above everything else, whether it's family, friends, romantic. I just people that connection with people is what I really thrive off of. And I was in an industry before I became a therapist, that had me traveling on the road, sometimes for a year plus at a time. And that's really hard on relationships. And so, kind of opened up my romantic relationships, saying, listen, if I'm away and you have a connection with someone, or if I'm connecting with someone, let's talk about it. Let's not be afraid of that. And we can sort of figure it out as we go. And so those weren't always easy, but I learned a lot. And that was definitely before there was so much hype around it. I feel like right now there's a lot more hype around it, a lot more conversation around it, a lot more books around it, podcasts like this one, sex positive therapists and coaches like we are. And so it's been really interesting to sort of have my own journey, but then also be in a position to help people through their journeys as well.
Awesome, Kelly. I can't wait to hear more about all of y'all's stories. They're interesting. I guess I'll go. My name is Mo, and I loved that you started it, Melissa, without the telling them what you do for work, because we always do that. We always start with what we do for work, and obviously everybody knows what I do now because everyone's talked about it, but I'm not going to tell you what I do because I don't want to talk about it. I will tell you that I consider myself to be an artist. First and foremost, everything I do is, how did I get into non-monogamy? Well, I I was born in Buffalo, New York, but I didn't live there. I moved to California, Northern California, when I was pretty little, pretty young, maybe 3 years old. So I grew up in the Bay Area. At the age of 18, I moved to San Francisco, and I started dating women at that time. It was really just like this amazing awakening time. It was, the AIDS crisis was happening all around us, and San Francisco was being kind of taken over by HIV and AIDS, and but the sexual freedom that umbrella kind of created was really something to behold. It was really crazy how crazy and amazingly eye-opening and beautiful it was. And just a little bit of a history lesson. So this was in 1990 when I moved to San Francisco, to age myself a little. And of course, same-sex marriage wasn't legal in this country until 2015. So this is 25 years before same-sex marriage became legal. And so this is a community that didn't have any guidelines to follow, no role models. There was no gay on TV. It was just a culture that had their own rules and did whatever the fuck they wanted. And I got to witness that, and it was just phenomenal. And they didn't have the term ethical non-monogamy at the time. It was just a thing that everybody did. So the book, The Ethical Slut, was written by a couple people in San Francisco during that time. And so I grew up in a place where this was kind of the norm. And I had a girlfriend, my first college girlfriend, and we were monogamous, and she was extremely possessive and extremely jealous. And it was kind of my first real relationship. It was my first kind of long-term, we lived together, and I was in school, and I called my school, we all affectionately called our school University of Lesbians, because everyone was queering at the time. And I realized in that relationship, how stifling it was. And I met this girl while I was still in that relationship, and she was like, oh, we were at a party, and she's like, oh, me, you, and this other girl, we should have a threesome. And I was like, what? What's that? That sounds really interesting and fun. And I wrote about it in my journal, and my girlfriend found it, and she was livid. And it was kind of like the beginning of the end of that relationship, and kind of where I was like, maybe monogamy isn't for me. I can't imagine not being able to try to explore all of these different things. So long story short, I ended up getting into a relationship with the girl that wanted to do a threesome. And she was having relationships with so many people, like everybody in town. She was sleeping with everyone in town, basically. And that was very difficult for me. But the rule that she had, and I've talked about this on my YouTube channel as well, was called the one fuck rule. Basically, you can have sex with anyone once, and you didn't have to disclose it to each other. You didn't have to tell anyone. It could just, but if it went again, like if you did it again a second time, because you can catch feelings and things like that, that's when we had to tell each other. So that was my first foray into non-monogamy. It wasn't very ethical. It wasn't very consensual, because I found out she was having sex with like my good friends, and just it could be anyone. And it was very, very difficult for me. And I didn't know at the time that I could talk about it, that I could negotiate, that I could ask for something different. I had no idea that I had choice in the matter. I just was like, I got to go along with this because that's what everyone else is doing. So that's where I got really interested. I think I was 23 when I was in that relationship. So that's how it all started. I was like, nope, there's got to be a better way. What is that way? And so here I am today.
It's so wild that we all come from such different backgrounds and we all ended up here. It's so dope.
Mhm.
We all have such different stories and how we came here.
I'm so excited for this. I had to say, I mean, I was already looking forward to doing the podcast, but actually now that we're here and talking and doing it, I'm like, damn, this is so cool. Because not only do we get to talk about non-monogamy and our experiences of relation, I think the one thing that we all have in common is, kind of what Kelly said, is like our passion, our interests, and our like actual values of relationships and connections in our life. And including the ones like with each other. And so I'm so excited to get, like, I've heard some of your stories before, including Wayne's, like I heard his so many times, but it's so nice to hear them again. And it's so cool to hear new things. And it's going to be really nice to like be in real time with you all, like getting to know you on a deeper level. And at the same time, like sharing information, with the world. So I'm really
Yeah,
excited about this.
It
me
might be
too.
interesting for us to share how we all met and our connections with each other at some point. I don't know. I don't know how much we want to go into us in that way, but that might be something cool to share on the podcast at some point too.
And we'd
Yeah.
have to talk about our work.
I was like, no work.
Okay, maybe we leave that out. It's just suffice it to say that we all work together now. We all
Yes.
known each
Yes.
other for a
Mhm.
while, some of us longer than others,
Yeah.
and we're
Yeah.
we're good friends.
Yeah.
But that's a good point though, Kelly, because when I think about how I met all of you, I met Kelly at a party, and I met Wayne and Melissa at a party too.
Hmm.
So
Great.
it wasn't work related.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I've known Mo since I think right around 2000. We went through an ex of mine that she was friends with, and then just throughout the years, have stayed friends. And Mo is already a therapist. I think she had already started Los Angeles sex therapy before I even went back to school to become a therapist. And then I had no intention of ending up here, but just one thing led to another, and I'm here. And then that's how I met Melissa, and then Melissa's with Wayne. So that's that's how I'm connected to the whole crew.
That's the rundown.
Yeah.
I didn't, I don't think I really shared how I got into non-monogamy. So maybe I could, oh, I did. Okay. I was like,
You
going
can.
back to my story. I did mention it. Okay.
Anything else you want to add that you feel like you didn't tell us? I mean, you were like, sign me up. I think everybody has that kind of like, oh, sign me up. This sounds great. But then like when you really get into it, then what happens?
Then what happens? Yeah, I think I kept that same energy for the most part. I mean, and then we'll talk about this later until like fast forward some years later when we started talking about polyamory, and I was like, wait a minute, that's too much, It's like, wait, emotional connections, even though funny in hindsight, it's like, no, I think that's kind of what I've always wanted, where I was always at. But there was a lot of just un unlearning, just automatic kind of, yeah, automatic programming around relationships. But no, I think the only thing I would add was just seconding what you said. That something we also all have in common maybe is that it didn't start out very ethical. So I love to talk about that part too. I don't like to shy away from that part. because it was a part of me and it's an important part. And I think it's very common. Well, not I think, we know it's very common. And so I love that we can all talk about it in this like open way,
Yes.
without the shame of, of what we did, so that other people can,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
feel the permission to do the same,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I think most people don't start out ethically, because I think like Wayne was saying, or I think Wayne, you said this, that we are as just like as human beings, like human nature is to not be monogamous, right? You said that today.
Yes.
Yeah. So with that, we're all sort of like, I think, naturally geared towards some aspect of it, but to do it ethically where we talk about it with our partners or we share our honest feelings, like that's a tool that we have to work at, right? Just going around and flirting with other people, having sex with other people, hooking up with other people is easy, but owning our feelings and then talking about it with a primary partner or a present partner or even a new partner that's where I think we get nervous, scared. That's where we trip up, and that's where the breakdowns happen.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think it's hard not to bring the gender piece into it. Just, there's this whole idea of like, oh, well, men want this and women don't, as if women don't have just as high a libido or aren't just as sexually active, and that it's natural for men to want that but not women. And not to exclude trans folks, I'm just saying this is sort of the standard of how people think, and it's just not true. And
Yeah.
this thing I say to a lot of clients and friends too, like, you can't promise how you're going to feel, but you can make agreements about how you're going to behave. And I think that's when the ethical part comes in, right? That we can ethically make agreements that we're willing to try to abide by, but we can't promise how we're going to feel. And so when you talk about, Melissa, it was kind of scary when you went from ethical non-monogamy to polyamory, then you can't promise, oh yeah, well, you can be physical with these people, but you can't have feelings for them. Well, come on, you cannot promise that. So I think these are all good topics that we can delve into.
And I think that came up for me recently too, when because in my course, in my program, I have a video about that. And one of the students in the quizzes talked about how the one fuck rule assumes that you're not going to develop feelings after one fuck. And that's not even true, So like I even just reading that recently was like, oh yeah. Like here I am like operating on this notion, like, okay, maybe that one fuck rule actually had some validity. And it had no validity whatsoever.
I thought that when you said it, I was like, well, maybe you didn't even have sex with someone. You could have had an emotional affair with them and had a lot of feelings with nothing physical ever happening, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'll get into that because I was in a relationship many years later with somebody that used to accuse me of cheating. And I was having emotional relationships left and right. And I was like, I'm not cheating. I'm not cheating. I'm like, I'm being totally faithful. I have not had sex with anyone yet. As I look back, I was like, I had all of these like crushes and people was carrying on emotional kind of flirtations with. And that's what they were upset about. That's what, he was like, he would always say, I don't even know if you're with Tom, Dick, Harry, or Mary. And I'd be like, what kind of bullshit is that? I'm totally faithful, but I wasn't. So I've definitely been, what was I gonna say? Like, I guess,
disenchanted.
not just, I've been dishonest.
Yes. Yes.
I've been unethical,
Yes.
even in my monogamy.
Yeah. And I was going to say to that point, like, I'm glad that we're having this conversation because what this does is it gives people, first of all, we're going to be relatable to a lot of people, all our individual stories and our stories together. And I think that in itself will help people give themselves permission to just to show up in their relationship, maybe to be able to speak out, like, hey, so I'm not this bad person. It's not, I shouldn't be the shame. I don't have to be the shameful person or have all this guilt, you know. And so, I get to like this is a real thing. And there's other people out here who can relate to me and who have been through the same thing I've been through. So I would love now I can gives me the courage to speak to my partner, or whoever I need to speak to and kind of let them know who I am and where I'm at in my journey.
Yeah. Yeah. You have permission to be vulnerable and imperfect,
Yes.
right? You have permission to screw up and tell your partner you screwed up,
Yes. Yeah.
or tell your best friend you screwed up, or just it's okay that you screwed up.
Yeah. Because I love the fact that again, we all were unethical at some point.
Ethical is a standard that we strive for, right? It's, but it's takes work, and it takes courage, and it takes you know, deliberate focus and things like that.
Yeah, and for me, it's like we're told to fit into this box, and this box has so many rules that they're going to get broken because there are way too many rules and boundaries put in place, and it's so rigid that things are going
Keep
to,
up.
yeah, like, oh, I didn't even, oh, that was I was supposed to do that, like you said, like I'm not cheating, I'm just talking to people. I haven't physically been with anybody, but at the same time, it can be so hurtful to your partner,
Mhm.
because that wasn't part of the agreement when we came in, and just so many things. And we did, so yeah, I get it and I understand it. It's just like, but it's so rigid. Like, I'm going to break a rule. Like,
Oh, and I can't wait to talk about how we've experienced that even in our non-monogamy. You know what
yes,
I mean? That it doesn't just magically now become so free,
yes,
so
Mhm.
freeing and
Mhm.
liberating, and we're just like, okay, it's like, no, we bring those same concepts into our non-monogamy,
yes.
Yeah.
and
Same
yeah,
monogamous concepts into our
yes,
non-monogamy.
yeah, and our
Right?
monogamy was very rigid initially too.
Isn't it crazy? Because we're so conditioned to be monogamous that we just, even when we've opened the doors to non-monogamy, we've made this commitment to be ethical, we default to these rigid, monogamous, toxically rigid monogamous rules. But one thing you talked about was agreements, and this is going to be a whole other episode, but like so many of those agreements aren't spoken. They're nonverbal,
Mhm.
and we're operating from assumptions, right? We're operating on things that we've never actually addressed and talked about. Like we have this nonverbal agreement, like my partner and I did, that we were monogamous, but we never really talked about what monogamous meant to either of us. So I was having all these emotional affairs and relationships, and I was like, no, I'm monogamous, because in my mind I was, but in his mind I clearly wasn't, you know. So we have to talk about those agreements. What are they? Otherwise we're not on the same page.
There's another thing eventually I would love to get into as well when we start to get into it. It's going to be an unpopular opinion, but it's something I've been speaking about lately is that like for instance, like just one form of non-monogamy is swinging, right? I believe that and now I've come to conclude that swinging is more monogamish than anything because it's still two people doing everything together. It's no separate, like we're doing it together. We have to be in the same room together. We have to be with the people together. We have to choose a couple together or choose an individual together. So everything is still together. And so, and then, and yeah, that's a whole another conversation, but yes,
I love
just
that.
something.
And
Yeah.
it could be ethical too. It could, because like a lot of those couples, they're honest and open, and they talk
Yes,
about it, and they have rules and safe words and all that stuff. But I hear what you're saying. Like today, like in polyamory, there is this idea of non-hierarchical,
yes,
or um relationship anarchy, basically, where there's no primary partner. Everybody's kind of the same level. I mean, obviously that is an ideal, also a hard to achieve ideal, because I think hierarchies exist. Even if you know someone for a long time, there's a hierarchy there.
yeah,
If you've known someone longer, even though they're not your primary, there's still, you've known them longer. So there's a hierarchy, right? So this non-hierarchical polyamory, non-monogamy that's becoming so popular is also an ideal, like ethical, non-monogamy is an ideal that we want to strive for, but it's sometimes easier said than done.
Yes.
Yeah, and I want to talk about veto power at some point too. I feel like
Veto power, yeah.
Yeah.
And we also need to, for those of our folks who don't know what polyamory is or what swinging is or what monogamish means, we will do an episode where we just talk about all the different terms. So Melissa, Wayne, and Kelly, get all your terms together so we can like go down the list. Veto power, new relationship energy, all of the, relationship anarchy,
I'm
you
just gonna
know.
overwhelm you with terms.
Yeah. And I love that because a lot of times, like I said this today, that we're around so many people all the time who are in our bubble, our circle, so we speak a certain way, and there's a lot of people out there who just don't know, and they
Yeah.
don't have the terminology, they don't understand, all this is new to them. We know that we feel like, oh, this stuff is out there. Like, for instance, I feel as though a lot of people mix up non-monogamy and poly. The two are interchangeable for a lot of people, and it's not the same, so,
Not the same,
you
yeah.
know, right. And everybody's poly, which again, they don't know what poly means. So I'm poly. Like, what does poly mean? So again, just define these terms for a lot of people who just think they know, but they don't really know. So I love all that.
maybe that needs to be our tagline with the music. If you don't know, now you know.
Would you all be open to, open to wrapping up this episode by sharing like what drew you to non-monogamy, or what do you enjoy or love, or about non-monogamy?
I think that's a
Sure.
perfect way to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I
And you
think
can
my
throw in monogamy too, if there's stuff that you love about monogamy as well.
yeah, I mean, I don't even all of my relationships haven't been non-monogamous, and I think I have found value at times in things being monogamous and non-monogamous, and so what drew me to it was just necessity for connection and being, and travelers, like I said in my introduction, traveling all the time. But then it just sort of makes sense to me with the way that my heart works and my brain works, and it's pretty simple. But it's really just that simple for me.
I I actually really appreciate that response, because I don't think we hear that as often, and I think it's such a beautiful and special reason that to hear people say, like, it practically, I needed it practically in my life, or it was out of necessity. It was something that was just, yeah, that we just needed, that worked for where I was in my life at the time, or whatever my lifestyle was, or whatever situations were happening, because that's so valid too, and that's so needed, and that's, I think, a very perfect example of just in general, the encouragement, invitation of just like allowing relationships to flow and to go, to adjust to the changes as we change and evolve in life. So I really appreciate that response.
But I
Yeah.
think even to be okay with that, you really have to rework how you look at relationships, because I think a lot of people could hear that answer and be like, oh, well, she just wasn't with the right person, or it wasn't the relationship, or it wasn't. And it's like, no, it was a relationship, and it was a very important relationship, and it ran its course, and that was fine. And it wasn't because of non-monogamy, or it wasn't because of monogamy. It was. But I think there's this idea that there's this one person and this one relationship, and it has to be lasting. And if not, you just haven't gotten there yet.
Mhm.
And that's not how I feel or operate.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, you value the connection, you value the relationship. It's not necessarily about the structure for you or the dynamic that can change. It's the relationship that you value.
Mhm.
And based off
Love
what
it.
Kelly said, I'll go next. So, for me, I want to say that I love the idea of feeling special. You know what I mean? That monogamous ideology around that. Oh, I'm so special that you only do this for me and you make me feel, and it does feel good. If I'm honest, at the same time, I have to understand and know that for me, it wouldn't be sustainable because I'm eventually going to want something. I may I may want something else eventually, right? So, and I've connected with people all the time. So if I connect with somebody, now it's become problematic within a relationship. So I had to really accept who I was and be honest with myself and be like, you know what, maybe monogamy is not for you. You know, may for whatever reason, you can't do this. You've tried it. You know, you were married before, you've been in relationships, you've tried it on several occasions and it's not worked out. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person. You know, it just means that that wasn't my style of relating. And so for me, I like we all talked about, I love the connection. I moved around a lot in my life, so I've had to build connection. That's what I haven't had primary family since I left the States at age 13 or 14 and moved around for the rest of my life until I moved to California. So I've always had to create relationships. So I think that's what has drawn me to the idea of non-monogamy. Just this village, this community, this support system that I create everywhere I go, and that is more appealing to me than just to feel then it just feels special to one person. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I love that. I was just gonna say for me, I think the realization was there was a choice that I didn't have to just do the one thing that everyone did, that there was actually several different types of choices that I could make. And I think that realization was really eye-opening for me. And so in my work, I want to just let people know, like, you don't have to follow the prescription,
Yes.
right? You don't have to do what everybody else tells you you're supposed to do. So I think that's the most important thing for me.
Nice.
I love that, by the way. That's actually pretty huge that you have a choice.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know that. People
Yeah,
I want that for everybody.
yeah. A lot of
Yeah,
people only have a
people think
choice. Exactly.
monogamy is the only option,
Yes.
or heterosexuality is the only option, or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Marriage, sex within marriage is the only option. Like, no.
Yeah.
So many choices.
So many choices. Yeah.
All right. For sake of time, I think I'll go with what I normally say. And that is one thing I really enjoy about it is experiencing myself through and with other people. Like, I really love that about non-monogamy. It just brings so much joy to me. And then one thing I think I like about monogamy that I don't know that is it's exclusive, intrinsically like exclusive to monogamy, but I think it's kind of stereotypically associated with it is just I think like the whole idea of like romance and just that new relationship energy, just that whole experience of being wrapped up with somebody and you're just so involved and just like, oh, when it's new, when it's going well and before all the history and all the stuff, it's just like, oh, it just feels so good to just be wrapped up in all that newness with somebody. So yeah.
That's going to lead us to have to talk about compersion, because
Oh yeah, I'm putting that on the list of the words.
I love Mo's taking notes of all of the
that's beautiful, and that stuff is fun, and yeah, that's really,
And
that's
yeah.
how some people end up at slaw. They enjoy that feeling, and so they keep doing it, and then they end up at sex and love and non-monogamy because they're feeling the oxytocin, excited, and don't want to stop.
But I will say, what you're talking about, Melissa, is like what I tell a lot of my clients is like, as we become, because so many clients come into my office because they're not having sex with their partner or they don't feel desire or arousal anymore. And that connection, that's why non-monogamy is so important for like couples or long-term relationships, because that connection that we have to our sexuality, when it's gone, we feel so lost, lonely, dry, barren, like we dry up. And like to be able to even like get like a glimpse of that, it's such a big part of our identity as adults. And I don't think that, I think that a lot of people in long-term relationships lose that when they're just being monogamous. So we can talk about that at another time.
Absolutely. And just to clarify, it's not just the newness either. It is just this idea, it really more so was the idea of being wrapped up with somebody. You know what I mean? Like, even if it's in your conflict trying to figure something out, but it's just that like, I see you, you see me, we're committed, we're doing this thing, we're like, we both want to be here, like that feeling of like, we are both here and in it together. But yes, definitely get high off of the oxytocin for sure.
And hence me and Melissa
Nothing
do
wrong with that. All
and
right. Thank you, everyone, for listening to episode number 1 of Shades of Pleasure, and we will be back soon.
yes.
Bye, y'all.
Bye. Thank you for listening. Shades of Pleasure podcast is currently unsponsored and is brought to you by Los Angeles Sex Therapy and Last Collective in partnership with Shades Therapy and Shades of Non-Monogamy. To support our endeavor so we can continue to bring this pleasurable content, please visit our Substack at shadesofpleasure.substack.com. Thank you for listening, and until next time.